talked in previous videos, Brian, about the call of the pastor, both the external and internal call. Thought it might be helpful just to talk about your journey toward pastoral ministry. Started out in a church position, but it's a little different in terms of its focus. So why don't you tell that story?
I spent about 8.5 years doing associate pastor work, primarily large churches, youth and music mix, but a big music ministry. It was a church that was driven by the music, not the word. And so I learned a lot of what not to do as well as what to do. But through that, the Lord just revealed a pastor's heart that I had. So I actually made an effort to try to pastor the people in my ministry, then the music ministry. And through that, the pastor's heart just grew. I started teaching in that environment, and a love, a gift for teaching and a desire for it. And then a good friend of mine, John Barnett, who's part of our ministry, he and I were serving together. He was on the mission staff. And the short version is that he and his wife saw this calling on my life to be a pastor, a shepherd of my own flock before I did. And so I remember when I finally just felt the Lord's call in that way, it was undeniable, but I didn't know who to talk to. In these environments, the music guy doesn't leave to go be a senior pastor. You're crossing the streams in a way you're not supposed to. And I chose to tell John, and John just laughed. He's like, Lord already showed me that's what was going to happen. So that was an affirmation that sent me on a path to just seek the Lord's will and find a church where I'd be the senior pastor and preach the word and shepherd my own flock. And that ended up being Auburndale, where we went to do that. So how about you? How about your own call?
Well, there's a similar piece to it, and I think that there will always be a similar piece to it, which is that the Lord is doing something in your life and in your heart, and the people around you in the local church with you will confirm that. And so I sense that the Lord is leading in my life. When I was a teenager, when I was in high school, I've been given some opportunities to do some ministry, of course not staff position, anything like that. But it was through that members of the local church, when I would go to them and say, I think the Lord might be leading me to vocational ministry, that they would say those types of things. Of course, this is what we've seen in you. This is the trajectory we feel like the Lord has called you to. And so it is that. And it was a longer period of time over the course of my maturation into adulthood and then just in ministry. But it was people in that local church that were affirming that and also investing in me during that period of time. Even sort of random stuff as well. I was serving in a support role and a residency role, met a person, and just after a few hours of conversation, just a sweet encouragement from the Lord to say, I think this is what the Lord's called you to. I think you should pursue it.
I think one of the things we're highlighting in our stories, and I'm sure a lot can resonate who are listening to this, that we talk about the internal, the external call, and I could map out for you the ideal how this should go, right? You feel this undeniable call, this is exactly what I'm supposed to do, and that whole local church says, yes, that's what you should do. But it sounds like even in our story, certainly for mine, the whole church didn't give affirmation to that. Like I kind of almost had to create, and I reflect this is just not a healthy church I was involved. They didn't see it as this role that they should have. I kind of had to surround myself with people I trusted who knew me, and that God used them as the affirmation you should go do this. I do think there are versions of this that we just have to acknowledge as a reality, that the ideal situation, most of us don't find ourselves in. In fact, if guys are listening to this conversation, it's potentially because they have a pastor mentoring them through this field guide. And if you have that, like that is rare. And so embrace that, listen to that man. And so I think that's a piece to this that we have to acknowledge. So often God gets us where he wants us, but it's not the same way each time, right?
That's right. And the circumstances that he calls people out of aren't always ideal. The circumstances in the local church, God may call a man to pastoral ministry out of a church situation that's really unhealthy. And so, the circumstances are always going to be a little bit different.
And I'll be the first one to say I was in unhealthy churches, not being mentored, but I got mentored by pastors outside those churches. So I saw what I didn't want to do and was taught what I should do. And just don't miss that God has different ways to teach us and get us where we're supposed to go.
Yeah, it's his kind providence to call his men to do the work he wants them to. Yeah, very good.